evening. Good evening. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Bad to Business. I am your host, of course, Shynen Saffron. Thank y'all for joining me. Tonight, I have a special guest by the name of Bo Aaron. Bo, can you hear me? Nice, nice. Just making sure we have a connection. Um, Tonight, we're going to talk about something a little special. As y'all know, my podcast is Bad to Business, B.A.D.D, bringing all diverse discussions to business. We definitely have a diverse discussion this evening. Bo brought something to me a little while ago, and it was very interesting. So definitely want to give him a little time to shine on that. Anybody who saw the flyer or been following the show, the tonight's topic is called "Scientifically Speaking versus Spiritually Sound." Okay, so I'm going to give Bo a minute to go ahead and introduce himself and what he does, and how he brings the diverse discussion of scientifically speaking to spiritually sound. So, hey, Bo,
Hey,
glad you
what's
could
up,
join me.
Sister Shan? So, thank you for having me on. I appreciate you having me on, and
Mhm.
hello to all your listeners out there. Um, I want to do some disclaimers first. I'm not a psychiatrist, a licensed, person that has some expertise. But my background is in the medical field. I am a critical care paramedic. I am studying a bachelor's in nursing right now, so I do have some medical background and
Nice,
learning
nice.
things. Dealing with this topic, scientific speaking, dealing on mental health, personality disorders, and characteristics, and spiritually sound. I am not a licensed pastor, but I am an avid studier and a do Bible studies with the family and different people. So we just kind of got on a topic and talking about what was best to develop with children. Is it characteristics or their personality?
Mm,
And some things that I've learned in through my class and studying is that personality is different than your character.
mm-hmm.
And it always had been taught that it's good to teach our children great characteristic traits, give build up their character. And I come to find out, yeah, that is true. But some personalities will form a different characteristic trait. And how is that characteristic trait not staying on? And so that's kind of what we got in conversation about. And there
If you
is
could
a
briefly,
scientific.
I don't want to interrupt you, but if you could briefly, before we go into this, kind of explain your outlook on the difference between a personality and characteristics. Because one thing that I wanted to ask you was, you would think that that was one and the same in one, one action. So, what is really the difference between characteristics versus personality?
Well, I'll give you a definition, the written definition of it, and then I'll give an example of it. So,
Even better.
personality, the unique and relatively stable pattern of thinking, feeling, and behaving that characterizes a person.
Hmm.
That's your personality. Now,
Okay.
character are the qualities and attributes that make up a person's overall character. And
Hmm.
now,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah. We can get to go ahead. Ask your question. I
No, no, no.
understand you.
I just wanted you to do the definition real quick, and then let's see if it's caught or if it raises another question.
Right. So to give a visual, if that doesn't give a great contrast, like I was telling you, for example, let's just say that we identify palm trees with its pine, right, and its bark, and we know that this palm tree is this palm tree, and this palm tree is a palm tree. But each palm tree has its own personality. It's still not the same, right?
Correct.
So you can identify German shepherds because of their hair or their likeness,
Correct.
but each German shepherd don't
Act
respond the
the same.
same. They don't act the same,
Right.
right? So
Right.
you can have some characteristics, but then there's something that's different. But there, with that, there are factors that go into how those are developed. And that's kind of what we're going to. And I don't know if you want to go more with your questioning before we get into it.
No, that's okay. We were going down the path of, and I didn't want to interrupt you, of about raising our children and their behavioral traits, if you will. And
Mhm.
as we're touching on that, I wanted to know, one of the questions I asked is, can can either of these be hereditary?
Yes, they can be. So, a couple of factors that go into and the developing the characteristics and personality is there are hereditary genetics, biologically and environmentally. So,
Mm,
biologically will fall into, excuse me, like the hereditary, the, the, the hereditary aspect, food, medicine,
okay.
because you're going into the biological aspects. And it does changes the chemical composition of
Mm-hmm.
a person and how they
React.
relate, how they act, react, or what they think. That's why you can give another chemical composition to them, and then they seem normal.
Mm. And that's where we talk medicine.
And that's when we talk scientifically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Okay.
so
Okay.
that so this is the scientific aspect. So it's by now environments also can, because we know if a child is in a um, not so savvy type environment, i.e., a gang environment or something like that, they may develop certain type of traits or characteristic traits. Now,
Mm.
again, this doesn't mean that this will always be. As we all know, we've seen or heard people who come from certain environments who've overcome, who've changed, right?
Right.
So there is some changing in the characteristics aspect,
Exactly. Okay.
right?
That, see, this is why I wanted you to give the definition in the beginning, because it attaches, you know, where we're talking about, where it applies. Is
Right,
it a characteristic or a personality? We'll continue. I'm sorry.
right. So biologically, those things. I mean, we mentioned some food, drugs, meds, drinking, certain things like that. That's why some people can be totally out of their mind when they drink or something. Like, man, what did I say again? I was like that.
Right.
But there are some that see. I don't want to get right to the spiritual aspect, but I got to touch on this just real quick. That Satan likes to put in the seed so it can stay in there down the line.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to keep adding certain ingredients to that biological seed for it to manifest. And
Okay.
once I can get to the core of you, all the characteristics will attach to that and will protect that core personality of you that I don't want you to see.
Hmm.
Only, well, you can take some medicines and get rid of these. But if you don't take that medicine, it's back, right?
Right.
You can eat good and you can get rid of a couple of these, right? And some meds and this and that, but you get back in that environment, you're not doing it, and then it's back again. Now, granted, we all can fall into these categories of having some character flaws because we're imperfect people. We're humans who have the same type of cellular makeups and things like this, and things can attach. But there is a development of a person that can cause them to have personality disorders and characteristic flaws.
Okay.
And we were talking about this before. That what's the difference? Well, you don't call it a character disorder, right?
Right.
Scientifically speaking, it's a personality disorder. And they identify the personality disorder because of characteristic traits,
Right.
right? So then speaking of some of these attributes and characters, we know that your personality or your characteristic will have a trait. There is a temperament, the values and beliefs, self concept, and how your interactions, right?
Mm.
These things will be steered into what's norm or what's not norm. And there's factors that will steer what's norm and not norm. Again,
That's based on a
genetics,
personality.
based on the personality,
What's
based on
considered normal.
remember again, personality is the unique and relative stable pattern, stable of how you think, how you feel, and behave, and characteristics, and how you interact.
So that's kind of like if somebody, comparing, I don't really like using these terms, but comparing somebody normal, acting normal, to somebody who's not acting normal. They can
Right.
compare how you should be acting in, at, like we were talking about, child development, how you should be acting as a baby, what you should know by 3 years old, all
Correct.
those things based on a personality.
Correct. And now, when they're young, do we expect the child to know your personal space?
No, not when they're young.
No, that's something you have to teach and develop, right?
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. It's important to develop some of these things so early. That way, that's like if we saw somebody on the train, right? He's baiting your personal space, and they're just yelling or just singing so loud. You would think, now, if it was just you there and you wouldn't do that, you may have the urge to do that. But a normal person would say,
Normal.
"Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, my man. I didn't mean to be in your personal space," right? Or if I threw dirt on you, or if I hit you, if I spat on you, and I lied to you, something, a normal person would say, "That was wrong, man. I shouldn't do that." That's why we can look at people on the bus, and if they do that, and say they must got schizophrenic, or because that's not normal. He just screaming and yelling. Now that's not that's something mental.
Mm.
That's something off. They're not acting in a normal manner.
Now,
Is
with that being said, real quick, now just as that in that example, is it fair to, and I don't like using the word judge, but have an opinion on that type of person and say that's not, that might not be normal, but we don't know if that's their personality or just a characteristic of maybe a product of their environment or medicine that threw them off or PTSD. They were once normal and now not. So even when we're talking the difference between a personality and characteristics, um, how can you be, such a good judge of character versus a good judge of personality? How can you,
Well, this is
how can
why
you
it's
say
so
that?
important. This is why it's so important for people like you and others to have this type of outlet, so you can see it from the perspective, scientifically speaking, and spiritually sound, right? Because awareness of mental health, awareness of what's really happening with a person, can give you better understanding. My people perish, or they get ignorant, or they say something stupid, or they judge, or they because they lack knowledge, right?
Mm, of
We
course.
have an understanding of what's going on, and we can see things different, so we know how to respond to what it really is,
Mm,
right?
now
Now,
we're going
now,
into spiritually sound, it sounds like.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because you
yeah.
got to
So
have that right seed planted, right?
yes, you got to have that right. So, of course,
Right.
God's going to give us explanations of things that happen with us in a natural realm,
Mm,
right?
right.
I mean, he just don't give it to us, and you can't explain the cells of my skin, and how the calcium in my teeth works, and the calcium the bones make blood, so it can we just look and say, oh, it just works. No, he has an explanation of how all these things happen, and scientifically speaking, there is some explanations from studies where people will do group conditions, or they look at certain patterns of behaviors. They assess symptoms, certain researches. Yeah, so you can explain, well, this is what happens with these people, right? Having
Mm,
that knowledge, going back to what you're saying, having that knowledge gives you a better response.
mm,
So the judge, so So you
So now
know
we're
where
going
to
back to
put
what's considered normal,
what's considered normal, right?
a normal
Now, when you
response. Okay.
if you understand, which a lot of us can, like with the example I gave, can pick out somebody that acts totally schizophrenic. If I just sat here and I talked to you normal, all of a sudden, I can't, stop. You'd be like, what? What is this? That's not normal, right? You say,
Right.
but did, but without normal, scientifically speaking, was there, is it genetic? Was there
Hmm.
a chemical?
Imbalance. Got you.
Is it on the biological side or was there environmental? Environmental. Did I have an experience in my life
Right.
that all of a sudden I snap? Because I've talked to, as a, as a paramedic and in the medical field and doing stuff, I've talked to young ladies who've been hurt, raped, or had some situations that happened to them, and all of a sudden they don't think the same no more because
Correct.
that traumatic experience. And some people would think you schizo or you bipolar. There was an environmental thing that happened
Correct.
that clicked on the mind.
Now, if there is, um, you know, can somebody come back from that?
Yes, they can.
Mm. See, because now we're again talking about the difference between a personality and characteristics.
Right.
Because here we go. So my main question is where I would think whatever a person's personality is, their characteristics would display the same. Teach a child how they should go, right?
Well, I'm
Okay.
glad you said that, and I like to get that. It's Proverbs 8.
Love me the book of Proverbs. Let's go.
Oh yeah, man, that's my.
Mm,
I'm sorry. It's proper. No, sorry. Proverbs 22 verse 6, and that's an interesting aspect that you said. Train up a child in the way he should go, even when he's old, he will not depart from it. Now, this is an interesting statement that people will have. Well, I trained my child. Why they just not getting it?
right.
The Bible train is different than what we may think is train, but similarity in a sense. We, in our own thinking, think training is, oh, I'll take them to church here and there, and I've taught them. And I was talking to this with my wife. I said, if I was doing weapons training, say if I was doing weapons training with you, like Shannon, I taught you many times that you just put the safety down, you hold it in the right hand, and you got to hold it at a certain angle with two hands. Your middle knuckle goes on your other middle knuckle. You remember I trained you that. Well, you talked about it. You may have shown me once or twice, but I didn't actually do a lot of hands-on training. We didn't have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
repetitious time. For
Mm-hmm.
my clinical training in the medical field, I have to have 360 hours. What I was coming, that's a lot of hours.
Yeah.
Repetitious, seeing someone doing it, having hands on consistently, going over it and having tests to see how well I am in that area. Because if I ever got out from medical, but when I come back, it's natural. I know how to do that. Give me the IV. Somehow I don't even know how I remember to do that. Or give me the medicine. Yeah, you want one epi, you want 2 grams to make a cocktail. Yeah, 2 grams of mag on a 500 cc and a D5. Yeah, I already know. That's just been trained in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about training that it does not leave, because again, you are battling something that has already been or trying to, in ourselves, open up and train you to different things if you don't stay
Mm.
consistent with it. That way, any cell that grows around what you've been trained, when you're ready to break that out, it'll disappear. But if it never really took root, you can say I
Mm.
exposed them to it. I can put seed on the ground all I want to. It'll grow. But did I really dig? Did I really nourish it? Did I come back and water it? Did I really, really get into it for it to
Cultivate
take
it, make
root?
sure,
Right.
yeah, that it would grow
So
and
in
and
training, that's the part we got to know, is that really happening? Now, can genetics change? Right? We can see people who was like, well, your mama was like that, your daddy's like that, or man, it's just down the line. And we know spiritually that it can, but to some people who may be viewers of this and say, well, I just ain't seeing how that happens. I don't know. It's just like hard and far fetched. I would challenge you to read all the people who were blinded genetically, who were crippled genetically, who had so many genetics that was altered that Christ changed.
mm,
Now, if he can change the genetics that can make you blind, now he said, well, that's a miracle working type stuff. Well, there's been miracle worker type stuff on people with who are had faulty characteristics, who've been in jail, and most of them, when they do go in, who did some most heinous stuff, who had bad personality, who had bad character, they find faith, and bam, totally different people, totally different
sometime.
people. Sometimes, right?
So now,
Again,
is it safe to call like characteristics just bad habits then? Because it seems more like, okay, so the personality is the root. Like you said,
right,
the characteristics are the branches that can grow from it.
right. So let me give you an example. Christ, if we were to look at Christ's personality, humiliation would be part of his personality. Compassion, forgiveness, a love, hope,
Hmm.
courage, obedience. Was Christ obedience? Yes, he was obedient unto death. Now, was he a struggle with his obedience about dying on the cross? Of course. He was in the Garden of Gethsemane, sweating blood. Lord, please take this cup. It's hard to struggle, but obedience was part of his personality.
Hmm. Hmm.
Patience, kindness, and gentleness. Now, just think, what are the opposite of those?
Well, impatience, unkind,
So,
and
so if
cruelty.
you have that a part of your personality, what characteristics will attach to an impatient person?
Okay. Well, rushing, anxiety, all those
Anxiety.
things that,
You,
yeah,
yeah, your characteristic is a person that's just, man, you just, hey man,
got to
chill
go.
out, man. You
Yeah.
you you too loud, or you too. I'm just that's my character. No, your
Jesus.
personality is impatient.
Hmm.
So these are type of things. And
But that's
here's
like
the
the
one.
scary part about talking about personality
Uh-huh.
versus characteristics is it's almost saying that you cannot change personality.
But you can. Well, I won't say you can't change it.
Well,
Um,
scientifically speaking, okay,
Scientifically speaking,
let me go
they'll
there
just want to give you medicines to deal with the side effects of it, right? Anxiety,
to counter
depression.
it if it would not
Yeah,
cure it.
is not cured. But there's an interesting. Well, before I go to that, let
Okay.
2 Timothy 3, when it talks about in the last days, people will be what? Lovers of self, lovers of money, that's greedy, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, don't have self control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, conceit, lovers of pride.
Mm,
Now these are characteristics.
mm,
These are characteristics that is attached to a certain personality type. That's why if you look at some of these a lot of these are attached to narcissistic personality people.
definitely.
But you don't
One, one,
say
one word.
one word, right? And you already know we can go way all day
Yeah.
with that.
We'll do on
but
another show.
but you call narcissistic people personality disorders,
Yeah.
and the disorder does not fall in normacy of of how humans relate or empathetic or thinking and feeling and behaving. It's opposite. Will be same true spiritually sound. We all will have mistakes and do something, but as spiritually, Shannon, please forgive me, sis. That's normal. You can relate because it's stuff that I may need to ask forgiveness for, right? Now, naturally, in the scientifically speaking, there's a disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
Why is there a disconnect?
Right.
Why isn't it that you do not relate to the humanistic feelings, empathetic thoughts, the right type of thinking as me? How can you say, well, yeah, I lied to them. Yeah, I did this and did that, or they don't even say it, but they deserved it.
With no feeling attached.
No feeling at all. That's not normal. Or I can avoid your space, or I can just yell, or I can just touch and throw and I just can destroy this and that, or so schizophrenic. Like how do you have a detachment from reality?
Hmm.
Remember, reality is attached to facts, truth, holiness. So interesting. John 8.
Facts, truth, holiness. Like that.
John 8, uh, verse 39. So interesting that there were some Pharisees that were talking with Jesus, right? And they were seeking to kill him for something he said. And he was like, why are you trying to come after and kill me? He said, you above your father. You follow your daddy. He's no, we and they answered, Abraham's our father. He said, if you were Abraham's children, you would be doing what? The works of Abraham did. But now you seek to kill me, a man who's told you the truth.
Hmm.
If you notice when you talk to somebody who is schizophrenic, who is bipolar, especially narcissistic, and you say
Okay,
something,
I was waiting on you to not leave
yeah,
that
yeah,
out.
no, and you say something true to them, it just doesn't compute.
Resignate. Yeah. Yeah. Does not compute.
Anything rational, anything factual, anything that deals with truth, anything that deals with some holiness,
Reality.
reality. And he said that I heard from God. This is not what Abraham did. You're doing the works of your father did. And they said to him, listen, we wasn't born again from somebody else. What you talking about? Another father? You tripping. We have one father, even God. And that's my father, God. And Jesus said to him, if God was your father, you would love me. For I came from God and I am here. I came not of my own accord, but he sent me. Why you don't understand what I'm saying? Has that not happened sometimes? You'll talk to a narcissistic person, a person with mental disorder, and you're like, why you not getting what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
where how is this not sinking into you?
Yeah.
It okay. You've gone through all the beginnings, you've gone all through the front, and from some reason there is a
Connect.
disconnect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is because a personality was developed early in life that attach all these characteristics. And it's not that a lot of them don't know, they cannot come to having that normacy of connection. Now, scientifically speaking, they get categorized as these disorders, and they will need counseling. They will need certain type of meds and this and that to keep them in a normal state.
Hmm.
How many of them going to go do that,
Hmm. Or can.
or can do that? So
It
when
is.
you ask the question, this is why when you ask the question, well, that means the personality can't change.
It can, but yeah, the risks are high.
Well, there is a scripture that there will be the goat separated from the sheep, and that there's
Mm,
not a that's a
mm,
reality that we do know. Now, again, to keep you when you were saying something, do we need to judge on these people? No, we just need to have an awareness that there is a scientific aspect that's happened mentally, but there is something spiritually sound in what we know as Christians. Now, there's not a lot of people's Christians, and if they're not, that's fine. Still understand scientifically that there is genetics, biological, and environmental issues that happen that gets these people into these aspects. But we know the
mhm.
bottom line, Christian, that who is always messing with genetics and biology and all these things. And that is attached to a cellular aspect, which is attached to a natural in your brain. But there is a spirit with your soul in the middle and your body on one side. That one's going to gravitate towards the other one. It's a battle.
Mm. You definitely want to
That's why
pick a side.
training
Hmm.
is important.
Well, and I wanted to touch back on that real quick because we're running out of time. But I can talk to you
That's
about
fine.
this all
Oh
evening
yeah, yeah, yeah,
long.
sure.
And I wish I had advertiser part two because we be getting ready for that. But
Right.
when we talk about raising a child and doing these things, is there a window? Because we've talked about what needs to happen and what should happen at certain times and stuff like that. Even scientifically speaking, what children should be doing at certain ages, in their
Yeah,
child
the
development.
milestone. So scientifically speaking, between age 1 and 10 is when the time you really want to grasp a child, because after 10, who they are is what typically they're going to become. Now, there are some windows that you can still work with them and change. Scientifically speaking, it's up
Right.
to age 10. Now, there is always a
Mm,
continuously training that you should always have. But whatever you put in them in that early age, listen, man, and if you recognize some things, you definitely got to, either got to work hard at it, or you have to have what we talk about, those continually training sessions, hours
repetition.
on the repetitions, and trials and modeling yourself, because that is environment, eat and feeding them good nutritional stuff. If it's some things that you can't do, you're out of your control, that's when the spiritually sound comes in.
That part.
But you gotta pray.
Well, that was awesome. Goodness, I had something. It came off the top of my head. Well, that's what it was. Not that we should be judging anybody anyway, but that kind of went back to the schizophrenic person on the subway. It's very important not to be judging people off of their characteristics.
That's correct.
We don't know what it is that pushed them to that point, and we can even
Correct.
look at the recent movie Straw. If y'all wanted to, no spoiler
Right.
alerts. I really haven't looked at it, but just by the reviews and the trailer and stuff, somebody was pushed to something. And I'm going to have a therapy show coming up soon that's going to talk about that, how you can be pushed to certain limits, right? So
Right.
that's a characteristic. I've been pushed to do this. That's not, that was out of character for her. I'm assuming based on how the movie said it was. Her personality was a nice person and she worked hard, single mom, whatever the case may be. But something pushed her to show a different type of characteristic. So one
Right.
thing that I'm really pulling from you in this is that there is a big difference between a personality and characteristic. And I'm so glad that you joined the show, gave me that diverse discussion because, like I said, my initial thought and um, I guess thesis on it was that characteristics are distributed by the personality you have. The person that you are is that, and I guess that's most commonly speaking. That's most commonly thought, but we don't take into consideration the environment, the medicines, the PTSDs, the triggers, the things that make the characteristics um, not who that person is, or not who you knew them to grow up to be, or whatever it is. But you know, you can't judge off of that. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that
You know,
that
I
was
want to
something.
suggest another movie, Sister Shan. It's called Gattaca. Gattaca.
I feel like I've seen that, but Gattaca. Let's see.
Yeah, it's
I'm gonna put that on.
people are chosen by the genetics that they find in them. You know, your blood sample
Mm,
says that you're going to be likelihood of. Oh, yeah, somebody else put it up there. There you go.
thank you, thank you.
That's an excellent movie. It's an
Okay,
excellent movie. But
okay.
you got. I'm not gonna get it. Tell
Yeah,
you
I
about.
was
But
about to say because now
yeah,
I'm gonna go get it, and
no. But
I
Sinners was
hope
good.
some
But
people do.
Gattaca is the scientifically speaking of what we're talking about, and Sinners is a spiritually sound.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for joining me tonight. I don't want to, take too much more of your time. I hope to
No, I
have you back
appreciate
on the
you.
show again. Is there anything you want to leave the viewers with, in regards to, any mental or developmental tips that you can help them when speaking scientifically speaking versus spiritually sound?
Well, the thing, like I said, is just being aware and be aware that there is two aspects into what mental health is, and the biggest thing that I say that draws people or changes people is your own development and your own spiritual sound and awareness of what is going on with you biologically and environmental. When you have that sound and you have that dealt with in life, everyone will can see that, can mirror that, and if everybody was like that, you wouldn't have people have bad environments and bad biological aspects that can happen in their lives. So
Well, one of the things I'm learning from the women that I'm around and the queen of collaboration is be the change you want to see.
that's
And
correct.
most times that's hard to do in a world that seems to be on one fad at a time. But when you can stay spiritually sound, you know, when
Right.
that seed has been planted, that's it comes natural to do. I wouldn't say easy, but it definitely comes natural. One of the things I prayed this morning, just want to touch on this. I was praying this morning and I, was asking God on some different things. And he said, Shannon, I don't want you to be perfect. I want you to be righteous. So that
Mm.
hit me hard because when you're trying to make sure that this is this and you're not judging this and you're not being judged on this, it's the spiritually sound part of you that knows naturally to be kind, be loving, be all those things that you're supposed to be, not so environmental, be seen, be conceited, be all those things that just seem to satisfy what the world is doing. So
Right.
definitely want to talk to you about that. And Bo, how can we follow you? People who might want to talk to you again, maybe do an interview with you on some other things, because you have a lot
Okay.
of interesting things to talk about. Please let the people know how they can reach you on Facebook or anything else you got going on.
Yeah, I'll have my if you want to follow later, Shannon, if you can, just post up my Facebook and my
Definitely.
email address. So
Okay.
I don't have I wasn't prepared, but if you can put that out, that'd be
I
great.
will. I definitely will. I know we're gonna be talking again. You and I have talked about a lot of different topics. So now it's time to talk about them with some other people. Reach one,
Right.
teach
I
one.
saw
So
somebody else was like, there need to be part two of this.
definitely gonna get on that. Man, we could go. I still had some things I didn't get to talk to you about, but I'm always
That's all
watching for
good.
time and stuff
That's
like
all
that. So
good.
we'll get back together. But thank you everybody for joining us. This is Bo Aaron. I will put on his information as far as I know. It's at Bo Arrowbed. But I have to put it the way it needs to be spelled. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna get back on that. Y'all just keep following. You'll see what's going on. Again, thank you, brother Bo, for being
All
on.
right, sir.
This is Bad
Thank
to
you.
Business. Love y'all.